Have you ever heard these stereotypes about Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders?
Wow, baby, me so horny.
We are naturally good at math.
Come on. Do math.
We are submissive.
We give you top secret at the massage.
How did Ryan use it as an object?
As an object.
Ryan used me as an object.
As women, we're exotic. As men, desexualized and passive.
What's happening, hot stuff?
Or that we all look the same.
Sorry, man. Oh, y'all look alike.
And I've heard all my life that we must be wealthy. Yeah, right. But here's the thing. We're not all crazy rich Asians. So where do these stereotypes come from? To start, like many stereotypes about one group, they aren't true, and it's difficult to trace their origins. There's another stereotype about the AAPI community you may have heard of. It's called the model minority myth. It claims we are the best minority, the hardest working group in the country, and the one that causes the least trouble in America. The myth may seem somewhat complimentary. For the longest time growing up, I used it as a crutch so others would think highly of me. But now as an adult, I don't take it as a compliment. One of the most harmful parts of the myth is that it portrays us as well-behaved outsiders who follow all of the rules, which can ultimately lead to a comparison to other ethnic minorities in America, whose own wrongfully placed stereotypes differ from ours. Unlike most stereotypes, we might know how the false model minority myth began. Some scholars suggest the model minority myth was sparked by sociologist William Peterson in 1966 when he wrote an article for the New York Times magazine called Success Story, Japanese American Style. He said in part, the Japanese Americans are better than any other group in our society, including native-born white. They have established this remarkable record, moreover, by their own almost totally unaided effort. Every attempt to hamper their progress resulted only in enhancing their determination to succeed. There is no parallel to this success story. By essentializing Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders as the model minority, it's like we're saying we're born with it and other people aren't. So if we believe the model minority myth to be true, that means people could think other groups could be born with their own myths as well, right? This concept has driven a wedge between the AAPI community and the other diverse groups in America. Let's hear from Claire Jean Kim, professor at the University of California, Irvine, who is an expert on the history of Asian Americans.
What this set of ideas does is it says that Asians succeed because of something they have inside of them, and other minorities don't have that. The model minority idea is a way for white people and the mainstream society to say back to the Black freedom movement, well, actually, some people succeed. It's just you're not succeeding because you lack these values.
No one is born a stereotype. By relying on stereotypes to explain people's predicaments, we let the system around us off the hook. And maybe it's the system itself that's reinforcing these stereotypes that hurt people of color every day. Now, the model minority myth isn't just what people expect of us, it's also been internalized by us over the decades. In 2019, suicide was the second leading cause of death in the US for people ages 15 to 24 years old. That year, the leading cause of death for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders ages 15 to 24 years old was suicide. This burden to live up to the stereotype can be so stressful. It can cause depression, sadness, anxiety, and despair when individuals can't live up to being the smartest, the richest, the quietest Asian American or Pacific Islander out there. This is such a complicated topic. Our AAPI elders traditionally value obedience and teach us not to start trouble with others. I know I used to embrace the idea of being a model minority because it made me feel like I could be accepted more easily. Our core cultural values and traditions of modesty and humility have perhaps perpetuated the model minority myth, but so many other cultures also teach their communities to do the same things. Lately, no matter how much our own culture may appear to perpetuate a stereotype about us, the type of racism and physical violence against us as a result of what people think, it's pretty shocking. New video tonight shows a 70-year-old grandma knocked to the ground and robbed of her purse in Oakland.
Another brutal attack on an Asian woman.
6 of the 8 victims are of Asian descent.
I'm so afraid to walk the streets and do my errands.
Okay, I'm gonna try and get through this without tearing up. How many stories of elderly Asian Americans being attacked will I be alerted to today? And today, this is a true story, the answer was 5. All of them before 10 o'clock in the morning.
I hope that it would never happen to any of my family members.
His mom, not the only victim, but another Asian senior, aged 78, 1 week earlier, attacked in the same area. Asian American Pacific Islander history in the United States dates back centuries. Like many groups in America, our history is paved alongside discrimination. And usually that painful history didn't get taught in school. I certainly don't remember it. Did you know the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882 was the first law to pass that banned immigration of a particular nationality or group? It banned Chinese immigration for 10 years. Fast forward to 1923, an Indian Sikh immigrant named Dr. Bhagat Singh Thind was deemed ineligible for naturalization in the US because of his identity, his culture, and ethnicity. Dr. Thind was a World War I veteran and proud to be in America, but he wouldn't obtain citizenship for another decade due to the discriminatory restrictions. In 1942, after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, 112,000 Americans of Japanese descent were concentrated into camps in America. No matter how long they had been here, these Americans were perceived as a threat to national security. After the September 11th attacks, many Asian Americans were wrongfully targeted, even killed. Just 1 month following the 9/11 attacks, there were over 300 cases of violence and discrimination against Sikh Americans throughout the US, according to the Sikh Coalition. In August 2012, 7 people were shot and killed in a domestic terrorist attack at a Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Former President Trump frequently pointed the finger at China.
Chinese virus.
Kung flu.
Storing distrust of Chinese Americans, of all Asians for that matter, for being dangerous during the COVID-19 pandemic. From March 2020 to February 2021, there were over 3,700 violent or hurtful reported incidents against the Asian American Pacific Islander community.
You need to leave.
Asian piece of
But there were likely a whole lot more than that because not all of the attacks are disclosed. People were scared to report. People feared for their lives and, of course, didn't want to speak out. All of that is a tough history for us. And for so long, we were encouraged to stay quiet, to embody that model minority myth. But for me, as a journalist, as a human being, I could not sit and be still and watch this happening to my people and be silent and do nothing. I knew I had to be a vocal advocate for my community. The Asian American Pacific Islander community lifted their voices this year at last to say enough is enough. This is happening to us and we will not stay quiet any longer. Throughout my journalism career, this is nothing new. Racial slurs have been pelted against me, everything ranging from calling me China doll to the C word. I even got a message from a viewer who said my reporting was terrible and that they hoped I would get fired for being an activist when it comes to reporting on racism and hate against the AAPI community. This may not be a traditional response, but I posted that angry letter on social media and felt so empowered that my fans then defended me in the comments, and I realized it is okay to share your pain. The history of the Asian American Pacific Islander experience, it is undoubtedly a complex one. The AAPI community faced so many challenges in this country, dealing with the feeling of being the perpetual outsider. But the increase in attacks on the AAPI community has also brought about this silver lining, conversations of change and togetherness for the future.
Vicious hate crimes against Asian Americans. It's wrong, it's un-American, and it must stop.
We try to change those forces that make Asian Americans a target.
I've been bullied my whole life because of how I look.
It is not just one community. It is every community.
The Asian American Pacific Islander experience is not a monolithic one. We aren't your model minority. We are different, flawless and flawed, beautiful and uniquely ourselves.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.